Dad wasn't into the club racing scene, which is oddly enough far more involved on a daily and weekly basis than being a professional, I've now realized. When it's your hobby and it's your passion, you live it 24/7. You're working on the car in the garage and the whole family go and take a picnic and go to. When your dad does it professionally, he's racing 16 races a year. Or something, and you're going to Silverstone, or he's going to Spa. Pulling out of the pit lane at Le Mans was not the same as me pulling onto Silverstone or Brands Hatch or anything. I really felt like I guess a young athlete must do if you walk out into the Miami Dolphins arena, or something, or you just walk out and go, oh my God, the noise is different, the fans are different. This is like the big time. I was always, as my producer said, you're kind of a square peg fitting in a round hole. You do it your own way. We're always on the edge of our seat like, oh my God, is he going to get us fired today? But as a really famous broadcaster once said, if you don't push yourself to almost get fired every time you're out there, by being sharp and being funny and being on it, then maybe you're just a bit boring. So, I have my own style. Hey everyone, I'm Justin Bell, and this is Cars and Culture with Jason Stein.
What a pleasure to have my next guest on. We've seen each other in some very interesting places, but of course, if you know Justin Bell, you know everything that he's doing is interesting because his life is just interesting. And so what an absolute pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you. It is. And I'm glad we managed to work it out. It was like back and forth. If it had been a dating app, we'd have probably given up. It would have been, I'd have been like, my God, his pictures aren't good enough, nor mine. But no, we made it in the end.
I would swipe left or swipe right. I don't know which it is for you to be on this program anytime, Justin.
Well, thank you. I'm honored.
I saw you at Amelia last year, and you hosted or were part of. You weren't hosting. Ray Evernham was hosting, another show guest here. A very interesting panel on Le Mans and on the 100th Le Mans, and we've been there, and the show has been there. And it was kind of what struck me about the conversation was just the collection of individuals who were on stage and the racing history and the dripping with drama. And it was such your element. I'm guessing that kind of thing, which is Le Mans and or the people in your orbit, really are the fuel that keep you going at all times, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It was such a brilliant seminar. And of course, Ray is a great friend and just one of those guys that you love to listen to. And he's so intelligent. He's one of those guys, Jason, you meet and you go, no wonder he was successful in what he did. You could just, it doesn't matter what he turned his hand to, I'm sure he would have been. And yeah, when I'm doing that kind of a thing, I have two feelings to it. One is this connection to the history of Le Mans that obviously I have through my father. And I was very young when I first went there, and it was actually probably on the set of the movie Le Mans with Steve McQueen. Dad was doing it, was in the not in the movie, but he was one of the young drivers that they'd roped into doing it. And so that is a memory by association. You know what I mean? That I don't remember being 2 years old on the set, but funny enough, I just did the Steve McQueen rally with Chad and his son Chase, and Chad McQueen, and just having memories talking about those days. And he was 9, I was only 2, so obviously we weren't hanging out, but a really nice bond to a time in history at Le Mans that I think resonates with everybody that's a fan there. And then I think I went 18 times probably between then and early 20s, but by 23 I was racing there, and that was then it became part of my history. So it's a very nice transition from memories to creating my own, and to be up on in a panel like that when you're with these guys that are legitimately Le Mans heroes, and Alvin Springer and people like my dad who had just. Was Dad in that one? I can't remember. I've done a few of those, but people that have made history there, multiple winners, and it's a bit humbling to me, and I feel like a bit of an imposter actually half the time, and then but I really enjoy it. Yeah, it's like I say to my My girlfriend's like, we don't have a lot of friends around here where we live in LA. I said, yeah, but my friend group is sort of in my car world. If
Yeah,
we go to a car event, I know hundreds of people and I have hundreds of friends, but when I'm at home, I don't.
of course.
It is the world we live in, isn't it?
You
It's
know,
that second family that is the car world.
you mentioned it. You were really enveloped in the passion and the competitive side of the sport racing from an early age. And your father, a five-time
Mm.
Le Mans 24-hour winner. You grew up in and around racing. What was that like?
To be honest, Jason, I don't think I knew any different for quite a few years. I kind of got beaten up at prep school over it. Oh, your dad's, you think he's fancy as Derek Bell. And I was like, well, what's that got to do with anything? And then
Hmm.
you got the crap kicked out of me. It was teenage boy kind of stuff. But I we went to races as a kid, but I didn't, dad wasn't into the club racing scene, which is oddly enough far more involved on a daily and weekly basis than being a professional. I've now realized when it's your hobby and it's your passion, you live it 24/7. You're working on the car in the garage and the whole family go and take a picnic and go to, when your dad does it professionally, he's racing 16 races a year,
Yeah.
or something. And you're going to Silverstone or he's going to Spa, and they're races that necessarily the foreign ones we wouldn't go to. So in a way, our exposure to him racing was quite low until we're at Silverstone. And then I realized you don't just, I remember it clearly, you don't yell dad down the pit lane because 500 guys turn around. And then, the first time I went, Derek, and, then he turned around. But I think part of it is that you're immersed in it. My dad's friends were in racing, but again, when he was home, they really weren't. We come from a very rural area down in the south of England, and right where Goodwood is now. And I just thought this sort of immersion in it, and it wasn't until I actually went to the Formula Ford Festival with my best buddy James and his dad, and I went, "Oh my God, this guy's my age, they're my age. Why aren't I racing?" I never did karting or anything, but I did motocross, and I was racing motocross bikes. And suddenly I thought, "Oh my God, this is how you do it." I didn't know, Jason, how you got into the top form of racing. I mean, how you got into racing. I just knew what you did when you're in the top form of racing, and I've said it before in interviews, but Chloe Mason, Nick Mason's daughter, we didn't date, but we were great friends. And well, I wanted her to date, she didn't. And we talked about it. She was used to going to Wembley with Pink Floyd. She didn't go to a pub and sit on the edge of the stage and watch her dad play banjo. You know what I mean? It was, or play the drums rather. Not being disrespectful. She didn't watch him in
Yeah.
a pub band. She watched him at Wembley. So that's all she knew. So it was like a peek behind the curtain. It was my sort of Wizard of Oz moment. And I was like, all right, now I'm going to do it.
It's interesting. Your dad, just a moment on him. He grew up on a farm.
Yeah.
He there was his own, or there was the family pub that was there, right? And he was actually encouraged by his stepfather to take up
Yeah.
racing in the early '60s. And funny enough, you mentioned Goodwood. That was where he won his first race, right? So
Totally.
so this whole notion of being a racing family, I mean, it kind of started in a way out of nowhere.
Totally out of nowhere. Interestingly enough, this week, I'm leaving on Wednesday
Hmm.
to England. It's the Goodwood members meeting, and it is 60 years to the day that my dad won his first race, competed in a Lotus 7 in the rain. So that's this Sunday. I don't know when the show comes out, but whatever this Sunday is, like,
Right.
April 15th, 14th. And so what a crazy time to be talking about it. But yeah, dad was a farmer's son. Actually, he wasn't. His father was in the Navy and was worked for the BBC and wore a bowler hat every day and went to the BBC, very formal gentleman. His parents got divorced when he was 8, and they moved down to the south of England from this kind of relatively dreary suburban London flat, and suddenly dad's operating tractors and things on the farm and driving trucks around at a very young age. So he didn't really want to go back up to London very often. It was a kid's dream. And he could hear the cars at Goodwood. You could hear them testing. And he went up and, I mean, he can elaborate on the story more, but he would see Sterling Moss and all of them driving. And he, did a little bit of marshalling there, volunteered and did that, and then entered his first race. And the rest is history. But I mean, I guess at that point there was no you'd have been running out of years to drive cars if you went back in the lineage, couldn't go too far back after that, if it's 60 years already. But he created this dynasty really of what we do.
And amazing, some might not remember that the two of you raced together in the 91 24-hour and in the 92.
And in the 95.
Yeah. And in 95 again, right?
Yeah.
How and that was actually on Father's Day.
Mm-hmm.
How important was that for you? Take me back
massively. Yeah, massively, mate. Because as I said, I've been to Le Mans all those years. I went as a kid watching dad, and it happened to also be a very fruitful period of his life where he won it, 4 times in the 80s. And I just remember so many elements of it that changed for me when I actually got there. Pulling out of the pit lane at Le Mans was not the same as me pulling onto Silverstone or Brands Hatch or anything. I really felt like I guess a young athlete must do if you walk out into the Miami Dolphins arena, or something, or you just walk out and go, oh my God, the noise is different. The fans are different. This is like the big time. And my first year was actually aberration. It was in this Ferrari engine Spice, boom, blew up. We didn't do it. I had to go and do it because I was so desperate to get there. But the next year was in a 962 88 Porsche with Dad and Tiff Needell, and just to be there with these two guys that are so experienced, won so many races at the tail end of the 962 era, obviously, but just still, that was a 226 mile an hour car in the rain down the Mulsanne. Amazing memories from the whole thing. But it was really, that opened my eyes to what could be. And just seeing the fan support for Dad, and then kind of being on the, being brushed a little bit by it. But then 95 was the big one. I mean, can you imagine going Harrod's McLaren? I raced the car all season. The McLaren was the unicorn. It was the car that everybody wanted to drive on the road or on the racetrack. And it was, the supercar, hypercar of our year. That term didn't even exist, did it? Hypercar. But it was, so wild. And going to Le Mans with Dad and Andy Wallace and, being one of the favorites suddenly quite quickly. And I don't know. I mean, being able to stand there, it was funny at that point. It's like Andy's won Le Mans, and I was just really the rookie, still very inexperienced. But wow, what a driver changes with your dad in the middle of the night. I mean, mind blowing, really, to actually do that and lead for 12 hours on Father's Day. And if it wasn't for the clutch release bearing, we would have probably, which we knew would fail when it started to dry out. We would have. Could have maybe held on to the win, but third was pretty good on the podium. Was pretty good.
On the podium. It was one of the wettest Le Mans on records, but at the start of the race, the weather was clear, so it had finally kind of cleared out. But nonetheless, what an experience! And I take it you were back for the 100th last year.
Yes, it was a really amazing feeling to be part of those celebrations. I wasn't really part of them, but obviously there were a lot of Le Mans winners there. They were really focusing obviously on overall winners. I was just a class winner, but just to see the documentation almost that people have, the way it's, let me think of a better word. Le Mans has been such a big part of so many people's lives, whether you're from the driver to the team owners to the sponsors that have been there for decades, some of them, then to the media and then to the fans. and international fans and then local fans. I mean, there's a rhythm to Le Mans, and there's a ritual that these people, every one of us has our own ritual at Le Mans. And, whether it's the guy turning up with his mates in a Jag and, camping, and, there might be barristers in London in the High Court during the rest of the year, and they like regress to being, moronic uh, college boys. But isn't that the same with all sports? It's the same here, right? You go to Super Bowl and you're like, what do you do? I'm a, pediatric neurosurgeon, but you've got a bucket on your head. What, you just like going to Sebring? You're carrying a chicken around on a leash. It's so Le Mans a bit like that, and I love the fan side, and really do. It made me really realize last year. There's this lady who's always there. I think she's Belgium. She was a very short, sort of salt and pepper hair, and I hadn't been there for 3 years, and she just whips out her folder, and there's my name, and there's all these pictures, and she gets you to sign them. How long has she been carrying those around for? I mean, a decade. It's like it's amazing, and it's very yeah. It's such a reward, and you realize that everything you went through at Le Mans when you're in the race is a very, it's a real roller coaster from the highs to the lows, and if you finish, you feel like you climb Mount Everest, and if you win or you place well and you get to the podium, you really have done something very special. And it really made me, in a way, not last year, but racing at Le Mans and then going there for 10, 15 years doing Speed Channel, covering it. Yeah. It made me really appreciate actually who he is, what he achieved. I mean, winning it 5 times is kind of wild.
Yeah, it is wild. Yeah, I just met Jackie Ix recently.
6 times. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Right. And you feel that passion of the accomplishment still coming through with a guy like Jackie now in his early 80s. It's funny.
Did you ever? Sorry, I'm gonna ask you a question. You didn't interview Jackie, did you?
I'm about to. Yeah,
I'll give you some guidelines. I'll give you some guidelines.
Please do.
You are going to light a taper, and then whatever you think you're going to talk about, he is going to go off on his own thing. I mean, I've done it on stage, and he wanted me to be the interviewer at Amelia, and they wanted me to be the interviewer, and I stood up and I said, "Wow, Jackie." And he just stands up, and it's a bit like a comedy skit. He's like getting up behind me and just coming forward, and I just shut up, and he just talked. And then I was like, it was like the words of the world, words of pearls of wisdom and everything. And it was very, very funny. And
it'll be a 1-question interview.
You're going to have a great time. I'm actually going to have to watch to see how you fare. You'll do great. You'll do great. But he's very spiritual now, very worldly. So you'll enjoy it.
Well, he's working now with Genesis, the brand Genesis, as a brand ambassador. And we were there at the New York Auto Show last week, and he was explaining what Genesis means to him and how we got included in all of this stuff. And so it led to a natural progression of, well, let's have you on the program, which we will.
I love that. That's great. Really well done.
My experience at Le Mans last summer was my first, and I mean, I'm sure LeBron James and Tom Brady show up every year, right?
I mean, of course they do. I think I heard that. I heard LeBron James was, like waiting in the ACO suite, going, I mean, what the heck am I doing here? What are these people? What are they doing? I mean, he was in, out on the big jet, I'm sure, and gone. But it was very cool to have him there. And Tom Brady, I saw him down the end of the pit lane. That's the only glimpse I got, but it was more of a throng of people. But I've been really fortunate, especially when I did the Speed Channel stuff. I used to open the whole broadcast from the front of the grid, and it's great. I feel so comfortable there. It's like a home from home, really, in that way. And so they trusted me to open, the main broadcast. And I'd stand there with the open track behind me, and it would just be, into turn 1, and then the full grandstands to one side, and then all the ACO and everybody in one place. And then this throng of people, going into the distance with all these cars, and it just would always strike me that level of preparation that has gone into I mean, obviously in total probably tens and tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But you could 10x that with Toyota, can't you? But it was billions over the years,
Right.
decades, and you're like, wow, this is the Super Bowl, this is the Indy 500, this is Le Mans. There's nothing like it. And when it came to celebrities last year, you probably saw Frederick Vasseur's there, and he'd just taken over the role. And you see Fernando Alonso's there. I mean,
John
Charles
Elkann.
Leclerc, and
Yeah.
John Elkann. I mean, it's an off weekend. They're not racing Formula One that weekend, and they never clash for good reason. And just having Alonso there, coming in, winning Le Mans, then going back to Formula One. All right, that shows how significant sports cars are.
You're no stranger to broadcasting, as you mentioned, or podcasts. In the interest of audience sharing, tell us a bit about your podcast and how it's going, and then I want to talk about generally about the win.
Yeah. So you know how hard it is to start a podcast. It's you've got to grind in and do it. And really, the podcasting thing came off on the back of all my legitimate TV work I did, which was Speed Channel for a long time, then Fox Sports. And then when IMSA went to NBC, it's like, it didn't matter what the fans said. And I was they tell me I was popular with the fans. I was always, as my producer said, you're kind of a square peg fitting in a round hole. You do it your own way. We're always on the edge of our seat, like, oh my God, is he going to get us fired today? But as a really famous broadcaster once said, if you don't push yourself to almost get fired every time you're out there, by being sharp and being funny and being on it, then maybe you're just a bit boring. So, I have my own style.
Yeah.
And when it went to NBC, I had no seat in the room. It was a little bit bemusing. And then even though I do think the top people at IMSA wanted me, then Tommy Kendall and I started the talk show,
Right.
which was with Jason Jacobson, and who was with IMSA in NASCAR Productions. And we had such a great time. We went to all the IMSA races, and I had this Airstream, and it was really podcast-like, but we had a stage and everything.
A live stream.
It was a live stream.
Right.
We became live stream experts. And we shook that tree, and then COVID happened, and I'm not going to say we're the only ones that got affected by it, but you start a new business 1 year in, with Michelin as sponsors. It was a little bit of a drag for us, obviously, as well. But we carried on a bit, emerged from lockdown without that contract. But meantime, Jason, I'd done a lot of work with Pebble Beach, and over the years, and Jason, Tommy, and I, Talk Media, we became the live stream hosts and producers for Pebble Beach. So suddenly we got the world's #1 car event, and it's our show. It's not Motor Trend, it's not CBS, it's not Fox, it's us. And from that, we've grown, and we do Chattanooga, and we're now doing stuff with Haggerty, and we did Audrain. I mean, we really found a niche. But I always wanted my own chat show. That's what started the talk show. I wanted my own chat show. And then I'm like, oh, I want to do more. Very quickly, I started Life with Legends, which was a little vanity project, which is me interviewing my my heroes. Jackie, I haven't done Jackie yet, actually, but Jackie Stewart and Dad and Stephanie Hansen. And that was just, not making any money from it, but combining it with my portrait photography. That show's still up, but I haven't done any in a year. And then because of the live stream stuff, I got introduced to the Win guys. And I went in for a meeting, and I'm sitting there to talk about their, fast emerging Concours. And I'm looking around this room, and they're all very, very impressive people, and they said, oh, we hear you've got a little podcast. I said, oh, yeah. They said, have you seen our new $6 million podcast studio downstairs? Well, no, I haven't. Now, you don't say once a racing driver, always a racing driver. Once someone always looking for a deal, you're always looking for a deal. Within 3 weeks, we had a Drive to Win, the Formula One show, because they didn't have any content about racing.
Right.
And it turned into, I go there every week. It's called Drive to Win, sponsored by the Win and Mobil One. And Um, I go there every week. There's a race on the Tuesday, so I go tomorrow, and I really love it. Obviously the facilities are amazing. Working with the Wind people has been incredible. But getting guests on, we had Valtteri Bottas and I had Yuki Tsunoda. I mean, but I didn't realize that Formula One drivers were so tough to crack because of their schedules. I was being a bit naive. As you probably know, you don't just get Daniel Ricciardo on because it suits you. They're
Right.
so obligated, these drivers. But I've got Dale Jr. on tomorrow. And now no connection to Formula One other than a great guy that understand. I saw him at Amelia too, and let's talk Formula One. Most people are Formula One fans,
Well,
and it's
what a great time too. I mean, with obviously the Vegas race last fall,
yeah.
with the popularity for obvious reasons that has been much talked about. I mean, what a thrill for you, right? It's
Yeah.
you were in the epicenter of all of the activity at the end of last year, and certainly no shortage of things to talk about. What has surprised you about doing a show about Formula One?
I think what has surprised me is probably it is. I mean, Drive to Survive only just clicks the surface of what is this incredibly, in-depth sport. It actually made me appreciate the brilliant job that the Drive to Survive guys did. I've watched them all, obviously, most of us have, and to see that behind the scenes, yeah, sometimes manipulated and produced, but it's the same in any form of TV. But you marry that with my ability to have connections in the sport, so I can I get pretty good inside information. Being friends with a lot of ex Formula One drivers, David Coulthard, and I mean obviously Paul Stewart through Paul Stewart Racing, but there's a lot of them that I know, and I've really enjoyed following the series with more intent, like really watching the race, taking notes, seeing what's happening. And like any sport, the more you dig deep, the more you go, God, wow, the level of preparation of the drivers, the level of physicality, every one of them. I mean that. I mean, when Logan's, rather dismal Formula One career comes to a close, he's going to still make an amazing sports car driver.
Yeah,
He's just not cutting the grade at the top of Formula One. That's okay.
yeah,
Very few people do. But just, when you see him make a great pass on Alonso like he did yesterday, you go, yeah, boy, you still got something. You're still right there in that top bracket. But then you see the next level of those drivers. When you do see the Alonsos, but you do see an Oscar Piastri and just the Ocon and the talent in these guys, and you realize they are flat out in those cars at a level of physics defying technology, compared to the cars that I've ever driven. And it makes you realize it is the pinnacle of anything on four wheels. It's remarkable.
so let's get into a little bit of Justin's analysis of where Formula One is right now, and I'll ask you from a larger macro perspective, and then I want to drill down into some specifics. So, where is the sport? We just saw Max win another runaway on the weekend in Japan, which I think concludes about 2+ years of straight winning,
Yeah.
obviously give or take, brake blowups. Where is the sport now?
It's an interesting moment. I do think there is the danger, and Lewis Hamilton brought attention to it over the whole Christian Horner scandal and everything. Let's not get deflected too far into the cheap seats of the circus acts that is very, Drive to Survive is a perpetuator of that, because it is $1 billion plus industry. There's tens of thousands of people employed by it. It is an ecosystem that generates a lot of work, a lot of technological development, and it's always supposed to be about the purest form of motorsport. And yes, politics will always take a place, but if you were a casual watcher, you'd go, wow, what a load of buffoons. What is going on? I mean, you're dealing with scandals, and the FIA president being,
Hmm.
investigated, you go, whoa, what is happening? Did this happen before? We just didn't know about it.
Hmm.
And, I think that's a case of it. Um, I think that the calendar they're going to have to really manage. I do think, while Liberty economically would like a lot more races, and push everyone to the edge, the drivers and teams, mechanics, logistics side of things, I think they're at the cap right now. And Formula One should not be. It is, NASCAR arguably with, what did they have at one time? At 36 races.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
it takes away some of the uniqueness of a race when you just have a race every weekend. So Formula One is about waking up on a Sunday morning all excited with your coffee if it's early, or going to bed really late watching it. I watched it with my daughter this weekend late. It's an exciting thing, and you want to keep that exclusivity. And I think that's the management that they have to do. Obviously, new regulations coming in 26 is everyone's going, I hope we come up with the right car. I hope we can beat Red Bull at that point. But the driver shenanigans, as in, the revolving seats and who's going to go where's Carlos Sainz going to go, that's brought a level of intrigue to it that I don't think we had. That wasn't existing before. Drivers would just do a driver's change to another team, and you go, "Oh, that happened." Now it's a really big thing. Lewis going to Formula One and going to Ferrari, and what is obviously a 100 million plus deal a year, makes you go, "All right, now." Is he going to get his eighth championship? It's multi-layered, and I think they're in a very good place. But Vegas proved last year that, it was a shambolic start, obviously, with that practice first night being cancelled. But by the time the lights went out and the fireworks stopped popping on Saturday night, everyone was like, oh, that was a race.
Yeah.
How did it turn into such a good race? Why was the track so good? How were they able to overtake? I mean, it actually unfolded very well. And I've got to say, and it's not just selfishly for me, obviously being there a lot for the show, but I think it was a really pivotal moment for Formula One in America, that it had to be a success. Had to be.
You and I've been watching this for a long time, and especially in North America. My first race was the Detroit Grand Prix in 1982 as a young boy, and what I remember is being surrounded by Brazilians and Europeans and not Americans.
Hmm.
And to think about how far Formula One has come in this country is flat out remarkable, isn't it, Justin?
3 races in North America. So, I mean, you could say that there's too many, and I think they might cannibalize each other a bit. But I think in the future, maybe you might have a rotating one. Every 2 years. I think you're going to see that come into the calendar. Maybe 16 full time and maybe 8 rotating ones. I think every other year. But Vegas has got a long-term contract.
So
I
does
mean, the
Miami.
fact that so does Miami. The fact that and Austin is still the track that when a dad and his 2 sons reached out the other day on Instagram, what race shall we go to? I'm like, go to Austin, buddy. You can eat hot dogs and burgers, sit on the grass, watch race cars. You don't want to spend $20,000 to take your kids to Vegas. It's not that much now, but you can't see as much and everything. It's a different experience. Thank God Austin's there, because I do think you need a real so-called racetrack. But Formula One are probably $600 million in the ground, as in into the facility in Vegas. They bought the land for like $250 million, and they at least put the same again, if not more, into the complex. They're not going anywhere. That is the only track that they own effectively. And it's a bit weird every time you fly in or you drive past on the way to the airport, you see this superstructure just sitting there. I think as time evolves, it'll become an entertainment complex. I can imagine them doing like Vegas is tourist, so why not do a Formula One tourist spot? But I think right now they're just probably recovering from last year. And what you said about it's unbelievable that it has that many races here. Well, I think it's unbelievable that the American fan has gravitated to something that is as populist as it is elsewhere in the world. I don't think the depth of knowledge is as deep. Obviously, you and I and I mean, speaking to other guys, journalists and photographers, if you were a Formula One fan, you used to be, it was like a bit like saying you're a bridge fan or something, or you were, you like croquet. Everyone would look at you like, what?
Right.
Now, oh, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'd be interested to know the ratio of people that actually follow Drive to Survive and the ones that can't get through 5 laps of a real race, because races settle down, they get a bit boring for a while.
Right.
So who knows? But the great thing is commercially, wow. I
Yeah.
mean, the people it's getting involved, and maybe more crucially, and I mean, this is the answer to a question you haven't asked. I just thought about it. America has the financial resources to put young athletes into places of world-class stature, right? You can train them, whatever it is, skiing, gymnastics, motocross. Motorsport was never funded that way. You had the elite kids that had the money to go racing and they'd make it. Everyone else gets stuck in their CCA and has a good time, which is no problem. No way to get to Formula One almost. I mean, you had to be, back in the day, obviously Michael and Mario Andretti going, that was part of it. But there aren't enough women behind the wheel. There haven't been in Formula One in any way. The explosion of IMSA really doing well, but really the grenading globally of Formula One has allowed a lot more people to do karting. I think there's more attention on, especially these young girls that I do believe are going to be any minute they're going to pop, and we're going to have someone legitimately fighting for a win in top motorsport. But engineers, tire engineers, strategists, they're all coming by, and America has the engine commercially to push them. So I think one of the byproducts we haven't even seen the full advantage of yet is the fact you get Formula One popular here in America. We're going to see Formula One dominated maybe in many areas by Americans, which I
Yeah.
think would be great.
And what a fascinating transformation.
Yeah.
A few more minutes here. You're an accomplished photographer. How did that come
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, I love it. I actually got my cameras here. I was just messing with it. I love shooting with Leicas. My photography actually started from a place where I was an art student as a kid, and then I had to pack all that away when I started racing. Didn't really marry too well, pretending I want to be an actor. I wanted to do all this, and my mum made me go to art college when I said I wanted to go racing, so I did that. Packed it away, but when I came out the other side of actually physically driving, maybe 10 years ago, so much, I wanted an expression of something I was really enjoyed doing. And I went and bought all these paints. It's funny, Jason. I thought, I'm going to be a painter again. It was absolute crap. The worst thing I've ever done. So I was like, oh, photography. I'm going to try that. Now
Careful, those paintings might really sell one day. Careful.
one day, yeah, I'm gonna have to be on like the Sylvester Stallone form of art where you're really crap, but you're famous. But I really love portrait photography, and if you go to likewithlegendsanyone.com, you can see some of them. And I'm really proud of my portraits, or like I'm actually called Leica Racer on Instagram, and that's where I put some of the pictures. But I love it, and it's a way of documenting and very quietly, I do these interviews and I take pictures of my subjects. So I really love it. It's great.
Well, and I think your photographic style is actually reminiscent of the late Jesse Alexander, kind of this pensive black and white portrait. Is that a fair comparison?
I did. You know what? And I took his portrait. I went to see Jesse, and I got to know him a bit near the end, and I was very nervous taking his picture, but he was so gentle and kind with it. Yeah, thank you for that. That's a huge compliment. I mean, I've been influenced by a lot of people, and there are some amazing photographers in our sport, and I just do my own little thing and the portrait side, but like every area of the world, people are excelling and increasing their skill, being better than ever before. And in motorsport, Jamie Price, Richard, Rick Dole, I mean, my brain's just gone. Camden Thrasher. These guys are
Mhm.
artists with what they do is sports with cars, and you're like, it's not just boom. There's the edge of a car, with the logo on. They're brilliant. So I think it's an exciting time in every way. I do want to mention, Jason, before we do, just because I don't know if you're going to come this year, but something that's really been an unexpected pleasure from the whole win thing has been getting involved with the Las Vegas Concours.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
it's just, last year it was the weekend before the Formula One. It
Yes.
kicked off what we called Ultimate Race Week. And then we had the Netflix Cup Golf. And I mean, it was crazy, right? I hosted red carpet with all the drivers. I was having a good time. But I walked away from the Concours. I hosted it and emceed it. And I was like, within 3 years, this could be outside Pebble Beach, maybe the biggest in the country. And this year I'm part of the planning committee, and I'm going to host it again. And my partner Jason from Talk, he's actually helping produce the visual audio visual side. It's the hospitality. It's Vegas just do it right. Seeing these beautiful cars on the Wynn golf course, and something that I had not appreciated was looking up and seeing the Sphere, and I didn't realize that probably 120 degrees of the Sphere's footprint is on the golf course. So
Right.
unless you're,
Right.
a mega bucks player going out there, which I am not, you're never going to see that angle. I mean, it's a golf course, green, and then the Sphere. And I think it's going to be really good. Yeah, it's going to be an amazing year. So wow, how lucky am I? It's great.
And the dates again for that are?
That is right at the beginning of November. I
Okay.
should know that off the top of my head,
Okay.
but yeah, it is. It's on their website. Just go to thewin.com. Yeah.
A couple final things. Is there a track that you consider your home course?
Not really. I mean, everyone has, their favorites. Obviously, I'd love to say Le Mans was my home track, but that's the most memorable one. Laguna Seca, I'd say,
Okay.
is who doesn't like that?
Favorite Porsche?
Well, emotionally connected to, racing wise, I think the 962, just because, Dad and I raced that with him in the historics as well. We won Daytona 2 years ago, in the historic HSR. I would probably say Dad's got a 924 Carrera GTS that was one of 15 made for the drivers back then. And when I was 15, it rolled off a trailer and he said, "This will be yours one day." I'm still holding him to that. But it's a very special little car. It's maybe not the most beautiful, but, for me, a very special car.
I love it. We could go for hours, and I think I'd love to have you back on again.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm never short of things to talk about, so thank you.
We can catch up around the time of the Las Vegas Concours.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
And maybe do this in person. But what an absolute pleasure to have you on the program. I know we tried for a little while, and I'm really glad that you made it happen. So, Justin Bell, thank you for being on Cars and Culture on SiriusXM.
Thank you so much. All right, guys, take care.
Thank you.